Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
Series 12 of the Plant-Based Podcast is sponsored by People, Plants, Wellbeing. This is the place where you can find your magic through the power of plants and nature. Relax at a nature immersive retreat, wellness day, forest bathing walk, or why not contact the studio about a tailored team day for your work colleagues' wellbeing. Later in the episode, we'll be giving you an exclusive discount code for all podcast listeners, and this can be used for money off People, Plants, Wellbeing services. Find out more about Nature-Based Wellbeing Studio at peopleplantswellbeing.com or on Instagram under People, Plants, Wellbeing.
Just pause for a moment and imagine yourself sitting in a Japanese garden. Calming colours, fragrance, wondering what's around the corner, perfect topiary. Now let's talk about Japanese gardening methods and tools with today's guest, Jake Hobson from Niwaki, and their great stuff from Japan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you.
That will all make sense eventually.
Good to see you, Jake. I've followed the company for many, many years. I love the products you have, but also the way you style them, the catalogue you put together, your shop in Marylebone as well. But tell us about you, first of all. What is your background and what brought you into the world of Japanese gardening?
Well, that's a story I've told quite often. I started off as a sculptor. I was at art school at the Slade in London. Okay. And I got a travel award to go to Japan. I was interested in the sort of more conceptual notion of how the Japanese react with landscape and nature and their attitudes towards landscape and nature. And I went out there to see the cherry blossom for the first time when I was about 20, I guess, 21. And got there a bit early for the cherry blossom. So I got there in March and I should have arrived in April. And so I spent a long time looking for cherry trees as a sort of non-gardener, didn't know where to go. So I thought, I'll go to these temple gardens. And rather than cherry trees, I discovered Japanese gardens, basically, as a sculptor. So that's my sort of introduction to it.
So tell us a little bit more about as a sculptor, life as a sculptor before, and how you translated that into what you do now.
Well, there was a kind of middle bit in that for about 10 years I was doing a lot of clipping and topiary for people. So my real interest is shaping trees and pruning, which comes back to the Japanese tree pruning. So there was a kind of sculptural connection between fine art and the end product of now selling tools, was using the tools to make trees into shapes. But I think I was interested as much as a sort of physical element of sculpture in the kind of conceptual idea that you can make a tree look like a tree by pruning it, which is where I sort of jumped forward about 10 sort of years in the story there. But Japanese tree pruning, kind of like bonsai, sort of creates a sense of a tree within a smaller version of the real thing.
That's really nice. Where did the idea from Niwaki come from then?
Well, I came back from Japan. I spent 2 years working in Japan. I'd spent some time on a tree nursery in Osaka. Came back and laden down with sort of goods, with secateurs and stuff that I'd been using there. My brother-in-law had actually sent me a tripod ladder as a gift back to England, which was a sort of huge expense to ship the whole way around the world. And I got some work. I spent a few years working at Architectural Plants. You probably know the nursery in Sussex, which at the time was sort of really ahead of its game and was amazing nursery. And Angus White, the owner there, took me on really to do pruning and to sort of put a bit of Japanese style pruning, or the attitude of Japanese pruning, into the nursery. So the idea basically that you can make a tree look more interesting by pruning it. And I pull out my Japanese secateurs and people say, "Ooh, where'd you get those from? What are they?" And for a couple of years I said, "Oh, no, you can't get these. These are from Japan. These are special." And then enough people were saying, "Where can you get these from?" And then slowly, penny drops. I'm not really a sort of businessman like that. I didn't think immediately there's something here. But eventually I thought, hang on, let's see if we can get some secateurs for someone else. And we ordered a very small order to start with, and people bought them. And I thought, oh, that's good, let's buy some more. And people bought those. So it literally began as I was using them, people saw me using them, and everyone agreed they were good. So let's get some more.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love the story.
Nice little hands-on story. Yeah.
But before we go into the tools in more detail later in the podcast, let's talk about Japanese garden style, because I always think, like, I've travelled in Japan, I know you have as well, and I think sometimes the Japanese urban garden style is not always the vision we see here. What is your opinion of that? Because I think sometimes they're a little bit more informal, almost that kind of what we were calling wabi-sabi style a little bit. But what would you say is a typical Japanese garden for someone at home? You know, not the vision of a Japanese garden necessarily.
Yeah, that's a really good question because most people think a Japanese garden has to be like a Zen temple with rocks and water and all the ornaments and things like that. But most people, of course, don't live in temples. They live in a if they live in a home, if they have a garden at all. Because of course, a lot of people in Japan would live in apartments blocks and not have a garden.
I guess it's about like cottage gardens in UK. Not everyone has a cottage garden. They actually have a garden that has solar lights, marigolds, and kind of the typical style is far away from the vision. Again,
well, they don't have a cottage garden, nor do they have Hampton Court as their back garden.
Exactly.
Grand topiary avenues and things. So exactly the same. Exactly. So as a tourist to Japan, you'll inevitably go and see the palace gardens and you see the temple gardens, and if you wanted to go home and make a Japanese garden, you'd base it on what you saw, which isn't real because you're living in a semi-detached somewhere. And you've got a back garden, and it's never going to work. But I think a traditional domestic Japanese garden really takes all the elements of the larger gardens, which are rocks and water and trees, and just reduces it down to a slightly more domestic setting, slightly less precious. You might walk on your gravel, for example, which you wouldn't do in a Zen garden. You might have a barbecue area. You might put your laundry out in a normal Japanese garden because you've got to use the space. You know, you might have a dog that runs around. So it's just a kind of rougher and readier version. But contemporary or more modern gardening in Japan, there's a lot more what we would look at and see as slightly more Western influences, a lot more plants going on. So traditionally Japanese gardens have quite a limited plant palette. I don't know if you've been out there and seen it. The traditional gardens have a lot of trees and a lot of evergreens and a lot of the sort of the handful of trees and shrubs that we all recognise as being Japanese, and often not very much else, really kind of hardcore palette. But then when you have a private gardener who can hobby garden and garden out of their own interest, suddenly they've got a huge collection of flora from all over East Asia, but also European and American plants being imported as well now. So it's a bit of a mishmash, really, but with a kind of Japanese aesthetic, a Japanese sense of style on it.
How about, just before we move on, just a little note about the kind of city gardens, because I found they've often got plants at the front of the house, and I often call those kind of pots are quite higgledy-piggledy, almost like a plant family at the front. Have you seen a lot of that in the inner city areas?
That's lovely. I mean, that's really because they don't have much of a garden at the back often. It's just a display of plants at the front, and they water them every morning, and they sweep out the road every morning, and that's just urban container gardening.
Isn't that kind of similar though to how English country gardens are perceived overseas? So if you go overseas, everyone thinks that it's this beautiful, perfect English country garden, but actually, you know, there's urban environments, entirely different balcony garden patios. Do you know what I mean? So I think we all in different countries see a style and think that that's how it is everywhere. Do you know what I mean? And if you go to another country, someone will try to recreate an English cottage garden. But I think that possibly the Japanese style gardening or garden is the one that is recreated or try to be recreated the most in other countries. Do you know what I mean? Wherever you go, you will always kind of see a Japanese style garden. Why do you think that is?
Well, because there's very clearly defined kind of motifs of a Japanese garden. There are these rocks and water and waterfalls and the sense of a landscape. So traditional Japanese garden was always based on the idea of a landscape, and the landscape of Japan was a mountainous and a coastal. It's a series of islands, so there was lots of coast, there were lots of mountains, lots of conifers, lots of pine trees and cryptomeria forests, lots of waterfalls. And all those things are commonly used in all the gardens. So whether it was a kind of spiritual kind of reference of those things, or sometimes literally a physical reference of those things, that's where gardening sort of began in Japan. And And that's been kind of over, I don't know, 500, 800, 1,000 years, been refined down and down and down, and architectural motifs have come in. So little stepping stones, little bridges, little deer scarers. And a lot of people just love that. I think a lot of people have the idea that Japanese gardening is kind of low maintenance, which is complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Well, I mean, what's the point of gardening if it's going to be like, I mean, the point of gardening is because we enjoy gardening.
Yeah.
You know, so to set out to build a garden where you don't have to do anything seems kind of, you know, why not just wallpaper your living room if that's what you want? It's just a sort of, so it's culturally kind of misappropriated, obviously. But I think there is a sense people get walking around a Japanese garden, a traditional sort of temple garden, very different to walking around somewhere like Great Dixter, for example. Because it is, I mean, people say they're relaxing, but I find anywhere in nature is relaxing. You know, walking in a field is relaxing.
Absolutely.
So I mean, why is a Japanese garden more relaxing? I think it's people putting their own sort of will and imagination into it as much as anything else.
It's good PR.
Very good PR.
Once one person says it's relaxing, then follows on.
Yeah.
But it does have all the elements of relaxation, as in you could go into a garden. I think it's a personal thing for you, isn't it? If you can go into a garden and it's all the hot, crazy colours, but you can still feel relaxed if that's your thing.
Totally.
You know, or you could go into a garden where it's a cool colour palette and that calms you down.
It's green. And,
In a Japanese garden, they have that kind of calming colour palette, and then they have all the elements generally that is said to make you feel.
And I think with a lot of natural materials, that kind of helps.
Natural materials, soft lines, nothing sharp and hard. That's true.
Some water, a little bit of fragrance.
We will move on to plants in a minute, but a few years ago, wabi-sabi was coming in as kind of one of the top trends for gardening, and that's where they allow nature to kind of affect man-made objects. Is that something that you've come across a lot with your garden exploration?
Wabi-sabi. It's kind of, it's celebrating the sort of natural imperfection with things. So I think a lot of people jump on it and focus on that and kind of pull that out as the main thing. Personally, I've never been particularly obsessed by any of the kind of cultural references from Japanese gardening. Wabi-sabi, I've got a great friend who's written a book about it, actually, Andy Juniper, and he makes furniture based on it. And I think it's individual people kind of use it as a way in. And for me, it's much more sort of big and sort of sculptural gesture than that sort of cultural element. But you know, a lot of people build themselves a little Zen garden in their backyard and say it's a wabi-sabi garden. And for them, it's essential, and it works, and it ticks all of the boxes of what they're trying to achieve. And you look at it, and I think sometimes, what's the point? But the point is they're enjoying it. So
I just remember it was billed as a top trend about 3 or 4 years ago now. So
you probably do a comeback then.
Definitely.
Come round in circles.
Round in circles,
I'm on it.
We'll jump on that. Yeah.
Hello, Alan, Michael, and once again to you, the plant-based podcast listener. I am Lee Connolly, the Skinny Jean Gardener, here to give you some children gardener advice to get outside and create some real memories with your kids. And honestly, you really can. Away from technology, away from distractions, just being outside and getting your hands messy, you can make some proper memories which will last for life. And I love gardening because of that. And that's exactly why I connect so strongly with my daughter outside in the garden. We make some amazing memories. And this week, one thing that she is always talking about is wildlife, because we have built all of these housing estates, all of these flats, all of these high-rise on basically wildlife's home. So we need to encourage them back in, not build fences up to stop people from getting in. We need to allow wildlife to enjoy our gardens, and we can do that in a few very easy ways. So firstly, let's talk about hedgehogs. I love hedgehogs, and they're really good for our gardens. We need to let them back in. The biggest thing we can do is build them a home. Leave like a wild area in the corner of your garden for them to like make a home in, or even put a storage box in the corner of your garden, a 15cm hole in the front, and then lots of logs and twigs over the top. And they will move in, it will take time. I said it before, gardening is all about patience, and you may have to wait a couple of years before hedgehogs feel comfortable enough to move to your garden, but they will. And they need a way to get in. So cutting a 15cm hole in the fence will make a hedgehog highway, but please ask your neighbours first. Also, frogs are an amazing one. They're great for children to come out into the garden and see. You can make a frog pond just out of a simple wash and nut bowl with water, a little brick in there. That stops the hedgehogs from falling in and not being able to get out, and also gives the frogs a place to chill out in the sunshine. And maybe a roof tile over the top for a little bit of shade during these hot months. And finally, just a bug hotel made out of a milk carton. We do this with schools, and it's such a great garden to make. It means that children can go and explore the garden to put twigs and leaves and pine cones, whatever you have in the space you've got. They can explore the garden, get out there and fill the milk carton full of these things. Then put it outside the back door and wait for the bugs to join you. There's so many great ways to enjoy the space with wildlife around us, and it's so important to teach children the importance of sharing that space too. So get outside with the children this month and help wildlife join your garden.
So let's talk about plants in particular, because of course some of the obvious ones like Acer here and there, we'll talk about those, but also with my own work in Japan, I found that they miniaturized a lot of plants you usually wouldn't imagine could be miniaturized. So Physostegia, the obedient plant where you move the flowers in place, those were sold in garden centres at literally 6 foot tall. 6 inches tall.
6 inches tall.
And they were incredible because you could then use them in containers. The other thing that was remarkable was Calicarpa in berry at just about 10 inches in height, and it was incredible. So what have you found to be some of the popular plants used? And you said that they used to all use kind of very set range of plants, and you've seen that change over the years as well?
Well, yeah, not over the years that traditionally they would be using Japanese natives in traditional gardens. So a lot of pines, there were 2 or 3 Japanese pines, red pine, black pine, white pine, a lot of conifers and a lot of evergreens. They have a lot of broad-leafed evergreens that are, because it's such a hot climate in Japan and it's a dry winter. So their climate, of course, is very different to us. Very, very hot in the summer, quite cold in the winter, but dry in the winter, not wet in the winter. So a lot of plants that you'd think would be hardy here suddenly don't do so well because it's wet and mild in our winters. But a lot of great evergreens and conifers, things like Podocarpus macrophyllus is a favourite of mine. So I'm more interested in trees and less interested in the smaller plants. But the way they can kind of manipulate trees is what I found particularly interesting. Here it's kind of been sort of put under the word cloud pruning, kind of umbrella of cloud pruning, which doesn't really do it justice, but it's a very good descriptive term for what is Japanese tree pruning. Niwaki, the name of our business, also means garden tree, right, which kind of refers in Japanese to the sense that a tree would be pruned for a garden rather than not pruned. So the fact that you would prune it, you'd want to reduce it in scale, and you'd want to kind of refine it and define it to fit into whatever scale of landscape you're trying to make. So in Japan it's just called a tree. They don't really have fancy words because it's just how they do everything. But one of my favourite trees is a Cryptomera japonica, which is great big conifer, and most of Japan is covered with it in the forests. But around Kyoto area, they do this thing where they kind of coppice it or pollard it, I guess, at knee height. And it's one of these conifers that resprouts when you prune it. Oh, nice. So most conifers don't resprout, but this one does, and you get these multi-stems coming up from it, and it looks like nothing else. And it's just it's a really sort of man-made tree, but it looks really natural. So it's got this very Japanese thing of looking natural, but actually being really artificial and really deliberate. Like you were saying, miniaturizing plants. You don't always see that it's being fiddled with.
That's their skill with a lot of things. Making something look natural, but it's actually they've made it that way.
Well, talking about miniaturizing trees, what about bonsai, of course?
Well, and so bonsai means, if Niwaki means garden tree, bonsai means potted tree. Right. Is a literal Japanese translation. And everyone knows what a bonsai looks like, and it is just basically a miniaturized tree. But to keep it small, you obviously have to prune it, and to prune it, you have to prune it into a shape, so they prune it into this sort of essence of a tree. If you can imagine what a great big tree looks like, how can you make something that's only 8 or 12 or 18 inches tall? You've got to do some pretty drastic pruning to it. So the skill of bonsai, I've never successfully grown a bonsai. I kill them left, right and centre. There's a horticultural skill and a pruning skill. And you've got to keep it alive. You've got to get the water level right. You've got to get the root pruning right. So that's transferred really, really well. Bonsai travel, the idea of bonsai, a lot of people get. And, all over the world at trade shows and garden fairs and things, you see a lot of them.
Yeah.
But aren't they better almost as an outdoor plant? We always try and use them as house plants, which is the vision of them, but outdoors they're going to
They're
perform so much
trees
better.
at the end of the day.
Totally. They should be outdoors. And when you see a proper bonsai show, it may be indoors, but the trees have come in for the event and then they will go out. So for 350 days of the year, they will be outside in the nursery being watered and being rained on and being winded and things. And then they come in for a week and that's it. And so they're sort of constantly recycled and reused. Indoor bonsai is kind of a modern interior lifestyle kind of thing.
Because they're always sold in the garden centre with the house plants, like in the house plant area. So if you don't know and you think, oh, bonsai, that's cool, you're going to go there and think, oh, it's a house plant,
Yeah, and they use kind of figs and ficus species and things, which traditionally weren't, of course, not a Japanese species, so they're not traditional bonsai, but they're the same principle of miniaturization. Yeah.
But displayed beautifully outside at Wisley. I was at the Newt at the weekend. They're displayed beautifully outdoors there as well. And you really see, I don't know, I wish we'd grow them differently in the UK. Outdoors rather than in, but that's a whole nother conversation.
We could do that next time. Yeah.
So in terms of gardens, if you wanted to get a kind of Japanese, in inverted commas, fix in the UK with a good quality Japanese garden that is representative, where would you go, Jake?
It's a really tricky one. I would, if you're in London, I would have a look at the Holland Park garden, the Kyoto garden in Holland Park. Which incidentally is where I met my wife, Keiko. If you're up in the north of England, I might go to Tatton Park. It's a very nice garden. But these are all kind of the traditional early Holland Park is more modern, but it's kind of 20th century ideal of a Japanese garden. So it's a bit like buying a tourist book of Japan, flicking through, landing on a page of a garden and saying, I want that one. And it will have some water, and it will have some moss, and it will have a few rocks and a few, not so many prune trees, because that skill isn't an inherently English skill. To see what I think is a sort of genuine Japanese garden in England is really, really tricky. I have a friend called Pete in Enfield, who I think has the best garden there is in best
Pete
garden.
in Enfield.
Pete in Enfield, look him up. Yeah.
What's this?
It's my alarm to tell me we should be here, Ellen. Please ignore that.
You're
we're
on time.
already here, so we're doing well.
Ahead of the game.
Continue.
Pete in Enfield has built an amazing garden, and he lives in a terraced house in a normal street in Enfield, and you can see it from in the house. So it ticks every little box that I can imagine. It's got moss, it's got rocks, it's got water, it's got all the kind of all the ticks that you would give it, but it's got 20 years, 30 years of one individual person who has grown the trees and pruned the trees, looks after it and maintains it, and it's so much to do with maintenance.
It's got the love as well.
It's got the love, and it's got the individual. I think it's crucial for gardens.
So once you've gone and got some inspiration for Japanese gardens, maybe you've visited Pete in Enfield and you've decided to create your take of a Japanese garden at home. Why are the Japanese tools so important? How does that come into play? Can we not just use any old tools?
Yeah, to a degree you can. But the Japanese tend to make tools specific to the job. And some of the jobs are quite specific in Japanese gardens. So if we're talking pruning, which a lot of the work is, they have lots of different kinds of shears for different kinds of pruning, clipping. They have hand shears for hand clipping. Their secateurs they're different, but they effectively do the same job as a European secateur. But the Japanese have an amazing history of blacksmithing, coming back to samurai swords and things in the early days. And then in 1868, I think the Meiji Restoration, samurai were no longer allowed to wear swords in public. So there was a sudden collapse in the sword industry. So a lot of blacksmiths turned to literally just had nothing to do. So they turned to other subjects, started making kitchen and garden tools instead. And so since the sort of beginning of the 1900s, there's been an amazing industry in Japan.
So there's amazing craftsmanship craftsmanship that's kind of like come down the line.
A generation of makers, exactly, yeah. So, their secateurs are great, their shears are great, but then they also have very good rake. They do a lot of cleaning and a lot of kind of low-level work. So rather than having a great big rake, they will have a little hand brake that you squat on the floor and do little sort of delicate work with.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it's like the right tool for the right job, because it's sometimes the reverse of what we do here in the UK, especially, when I work with Shopping TV, and we're like, one tool will do 10 jobs. But the Japanese, they're admitting that you do need a different tool to do each task, and that's quite refreshing, actually.
I think so, yeah. I'm a kind of jack of all trade, master of none for tools. I mean, you can overdo it. You do only need a few different tools, but... And I think real thing is good. You need to get good value in a tool. You do need to get good quality to start with. The idea that a tool is throwaway is just not worth talking about. It's got to be a good quality blade to start with.
Right, so let's showcase Niwaki tool brand a little bit. So what would be some of your top, kind of your standout tools that you've introduced over the years? Give us a little few in a nutshell.
Well, the very first, as my brother-in-law shipped to me as a gift from Japan, our tripod ladder. So Japanese tripod ladders.
Which we've got here in front of us.
Which we've got right in front of us, which have 3 legs, not 4. So until I brought them to England, I was the first person to introduce them to England, you had to either use a regular 2-legged ladder and lean it against something, or a regular 4-legged step ladder, which you kind of climb up and you get the wobble halfway up and you want to get back down again. So Japanese ladders have a 3rd leg at the back and a very, very wide at the base, look a bit like a kind of 3-legged Eiffel Tower, and are much, much more stable and much easier to get into position for hedge work and topiary and all sorts of garden stuff.
Yeah.
So tripod ladders key. I would say our secateurs, the Niwaki secateurs. We do lots and lots of different styles of secateurs, lots of prices, starting from really good value, going way up to silly price, made sort of by individual pairs by the kind of master of the company as a sort of side projects and things. But a standard pair of secateurs every gardener needs, and probably our best-selling individual item is probably the Hori Hori. Have you ever come across the Hori Hori?
Hori Hori knife.
The Hori Hori, weeding knife, weeding trowel. Absolutely brilliant for weeding and planting and basically pretty much anything underground, sort of subterranean, rummaging around and hoiking stuff out of pots.
And that's almost an example of an all-in-one tool, isn't it?
It's an all-in-one. It does. It gets pretty close to all-in-one, as long as it's kind of below ground. Not so good for tree pruning. You can't climb up it like you would a ladder, but But
hacking around, a little bit of digging, cutting roots, all of this jazz.
It does all of that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Love it.
I have to just ask before we finish up, what do you think about the well-being aspect of gardening, the difference between Japanese gardening and British gardening, or Western gardening, should we say? As in, obviously, I do a lot in the well-being arena. So, with forest bathing, and the Japanese tend to focus on one task at hand more than trying to do a million things at once. Is that your observation as well, in general? Do you think that's the case?
Yeah. I mean, I think before the term sort of well-being became something that everyone talked about, everyone was feeling it without quite knowing how to describe it. I think maybe a lot of people were attracted to Japanese gardening because they saw the result gave them a sense of well-being.
Yeah.
But the actual action of doing some gardening, some people get well-being from digging a hole.
Yeah.
I get well-being from climbing up a ladder and chopping bits of tree down. So I think that's kind of a personal thing, but for sure, there's not so many lawns to mow, and I think if we had to have a list of things that weren't particularly satisfying, lawn mowing for me personally has no kind of positives to it, but personally, no lawns in Japan.
Be honest about that.
I think it attracts that because small details, doing a sort of repetitive thing, and getting into the task at hand slowly and sort of thoroughly is a very Japanese approach to doing something.
Yeah, something that we could all do with, for sure. Oh, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much. I think I should just mention we are sitting here at Hampton Court on your stand here, sitting right by the ladders, and some lovely jasmine as well. And it's been really lovely. I feel very zen just sitting here chatting with you, actually.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely.
Where can people find you online?
Online, we are niwaki.com, www.niwaki.com. We have a store, as Michael said, on Chiltern Street in Marylebone, a lovely shop that's open every day of the week. We have a showroom in Semley, down in just outside Shaftesbury, where we're based, our headquarters are. We have a little store in Tokyo as well, in Kagarazaka in Tokyo.
And you can be seen on Instagram also.
Instagram at Niwaki HQ, and I'm at Niwaki Jake. Yes.
And you're often in Monocle magazine, one of my favourite magazines.
We try to get into Monocle whenever we can. We're neighbours with Monocle on Chiltern Street. So.
That's really
exactly.
cool.
So we're
well positioned.
Good friends.
Street.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello everybody, Max here. If it sounds like I'm in a fish tank, it's because I'm sat here in my van. I've just taken a break from building camper vans. So yes, apologies for that. But indeed I am surrounded by glass, feeling quite exposed, like a little fish. Anyway, enough of that. I've got a question actually. So I'm designing and making a new product, but I realise I'm quite out of my depth. It's kind of where I like to be. I like to be learning and coming up with new ideas. But I've realised right now I'm designing something that I have no knowledge about whatsoever. Long story short, I'm getting some solar panels installed on the houseboat. I should have done this years ago, but for various reasons I haven't. I'm finally getting around to it. But one of my concerns with solar panels is they're actually quite ugly. Now, emotionally, to see them, it's good because you know that there's energy being harvested and it's positive and good for the planet. But let's be honest, when you look at them physically, they're just not that pretty. So how about this? Could we build off the aluminium framework some kind of picture frame that enables you to plant moss or sedum or something that you would include in a living roof? Again, I don't know much about this. You, the listener to this podcast, is probably a lot more experienced in what I need to do. The panel itself is at a 30-degree angle to enable the maximum benefit from the sunshine. So at the bottom of the panel, I intend to put a gutter. Could that gutter continue all the way up the sides and over the top of the panel and harvest that rainwater? That would also stop the water running off and covering me when I'm going in and out of the door of the houseboat, because obviously that's a concern as well. So let's harvest that rainwater into the gutter, and can we somehow wick that water up the side walls and along the top to create a beautiful green living garden picture frame to solar panels? And could we install this across the country on every solar panel in the land? That, I think, would make them a lot more beautiful. It doesn't need to be massive. It could be maybe 10 centimetres wide. So the question for you, dear podcast listener, is what materials should I be using? Which plants should I be planting? What should the substrate be made of? Which fabric or material wicks the best? What's the maximum wicking height? And is this at all possible? Or am I talking complete nonsense? I just visually think it would be absolutely stunning. And while I've got you, talking about camper vans, as I was earlier, Carwyn, my business partner, and I have got a slight disagreement going on. I always like, in the photographs for outlandish campers, to have some beautiful greenery. It makes any van look nicer. But, and I know this is going to upset a lot of you, I often use plastic plants because it's not practical to grow actual plants in a camper van, is it? And have water sloshing around and mud and stuff. So is there another way? Is there a plant that lends itself to being grown and displayed in camper vans, which are typically quite hot, dry environments? Anyway, I'm ranting now. Thank you very much. I look forward to listening to your feedback in the comments.
So
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, how's it going?
Oh, good, thanks. Are you at a wedding reception?
No, I'm under a flight path at a flower show. Where could that be? Could either be Hampton Court or Tatton. I'm at Tatton.
Tatton.
Court. I'm here. I've been hosting the main stage, and I'm here actually on the main stage broadcasting to you, Ellen Mary, and an audience of just one apple. There's an apple over there on the floor, which was left over from floristry.
It's a bit like we've got pre-show access, you know? It's like you're taking us around the show early.
It's really cool. I dare not walk around for Wi-Fi possibilities, but I will walk you around in my head. So enjoy that. Yeah. Anyway,
I'd love to know I'm very well, thank you very much. I did fear I would have a little bit of FOMO with you being at Tatton and me not coming up, but I feel kind of chill about it because I know you're now going to tell us all about it, so I'm going to feel like I'm there.
I absolutely will. Okay, what do you want to know?
I want to know, first of all, because I'm not, this is going to sound like I'm complaining about it again, but I did not make it to the floral market at Hampton Court, so I do have fear of missing out about that. Tell me about what's favourite plants and stuff that you found in the floral market.
Well, I'm unnaturally obsessed with Gladioli Mohican.
Okay, I saw that. That looks really cool.
You're right, actually. It is this.
What colour?
Such an awesome ombre. It's amazing. And there's also a really pink kind of Barbie one, which is called Mars as well. That is cool. I really want to visit that. They're in South Wales. So I'm going to see if I can at some point, because they've got not only Gladioli's, Ellen Mary, but Dahlia fields as well. Oh my God.
Awesome.
So I've been salivating over those. I've been salivating over lots of carnivorous plants as well. Wax wicked plants. I've got some really nice new hybrids as well. Really almost like orange Sarracenia. Oh my gosh, really cool. Oh, did you see my reel this morning with Henry the cactus?
Oh, the foxtail. The foxtail.
Weirdly creepy. It looks like a foxtail, but you could obviously stroke your hand only one way, because if you go the other way, you're going to get loads of spines in your hand. So
there it is. That does look really weird.
I want it to go viral, to be honest. Yeah.
So for that reason, I'm just going to add it to my story. I'll repost it.
Oh, that's so sweet of you.
Let's try and make it viral. What does viral, like, how many likes, posts, or whatever makes a post viral? Like, what is viral?
And impress your mum.
Oh, well, that's going to take a heck of a lot.
Oh, darling. What else is cool? Oh my gosh, the really cool water plants display is here. Geraniums, some awesome pelargoniums I've seen. You know, the tulip flowered ones,
nice.
Like the old Trisha Andrea, what is it, Pandora as well. They're really awesome. I love Tatton. I feel like in some ways it goes under the radar a little bit, because it is the last show of the season. It's got its personality, because some of the gardens, Ellen, oh my God, they're really cool as well, and with some really nice take-homes too. Yeah,
that's really cool. I do think, because it's the last show of the year, a lot of people get all showed out, and so do you know what I mean? It does feel like it is the last show of the year. But on the couple of times I've been, it's been amazing. Like with you, like the show gardens have genuinely been absolutely exquisite. So
it was amazing. Pouring with rain, wasn't it? Do you remember we came up?
Yeah, of course it was, wasn't it? Did they have the smaller gardens there this year, like last year?
There's a really, really good crop of gardens. There's the young designer, there's the smaller borders. Cloud Gardener's got his alleyway garden, which is probably the garden with the most take-home, actually. Right. Really, really interesting. Trampoline frames as hanging basket stands, a plant inside a grandfather clock, baths, washing machine drum, really cool. But the other garden that really caught my imagination, I've already plastered it all over my reels, is called, what's it called? Taming the Tech, I think it is, or Taming the Gaming. Oh, I don't know. But the message is by Parker's Bulbs and Rachel Platt. And it's Chained to the Tech. That's what it is. It's about addiction to computer gaming and screens. And it's almost like you're inside a computer chip. And it's kind of with all the pixelation, the euphoria, so many different colors are used, different shapes, and very kind of, it is like pixels. It's really, it's so cool. And recycled materials as well there. And it's got a lot of plants that are typical mail order plants that you don't often see outside of catalogues, you know, such as ones I would have listed at Thompson & Morgan. So things like Eramuris, hardly ever see this used in borders. No. Allium, Flavum, this little yellow flowered one. I've been waxing lyrical about this all week. It is so distinct and different, and something that you often only see in the catalogues. And I don't think I'd ever seen it in real life until this moment, when maybe I'd seen it on alpine displays, but here it's been used with Perovskia, Catanacci. So not just the message, but the choice of the plants, the distinct plants that are there is just amazing. I love that garden. And some of the border gardens, there's one by a girl called Kia, which is like a slice of earth. So it's actually built up like a cake above the soil, which shows all the soil levels that would be below the soil, which is super cool as well. lot of imagination here. Yeah, really, really
I
cool.
was going to say, it's just so creative, isn't it? Like, just to have the idea and then to try and put that into some kind of concept that a visitor would come along and get it. It's so clever.
Oh, absolutely. Really, really adore it. And somehow it's easier to navigate, I find, Tatton, because it's basically one big square. I always get lost at Hampton Court, accidentally the river, stuff like that. Chelsea is too big to kind of move around. But this, I find it easy to navigate and kind of really friendly. Is that a northern thing as well?
Are you being accepted as a southerner?
It's really, really cool. And I just across from the artisan kind of food and drink things. And we've had them on each day after we've done plant bingo, doing some tasters. We had Janet with her grown-up marshmallows. She makes her own marshmallows from marshmallow stem and root, the actual plant. Isn't that inspiring?
That's amazing.
Cool, honestly. Fudge kitchen as well, coffee companies. Oh my God, really, really cool stuff over there. Cheese, might have a bit of cheese today. I kind of like, there's always a bit of camaraderie at shows, so you actually kind of get more sampling than you would as a visitor. I recommend to anyone, if you want to have more food, then start being a speaker at the flower shows, because then you can sampling here and there. It's quite a long route to actually get free food, isn't it? That sounds a bit complex.
I mean, it might take a while. It's a bit complicated to get there, but when you get there, you get some free food. It's all worth it. Well, pardon?
Tell me more about you, though.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't have anything as exciting to talk to you about as Tatton at Flower Show.
Do you not just get accredited as a beautiful individual or something?
Yeah, I'm accredited as a beautiful individual. Can you imagine there being like an accreditation board for that? How awful. Anyway, yes, I have been accredited by the International Alliance of Health Professional Holistic Healthcare, and that's for all of the like Reiki and hypnotherapy and neuro-linguistic programming training I've done. So that's really excellent. And I finally feel like through People Wellbeing that everything is coming together now. So it's been a bit disjointed for a couple of years because I've done so much training and like holistic wellness, and now it's all coming together. So I'm really excited that it's going to be like a big holistic wellness package that I'll be able to deliver to companies and to individuals, but all based around plants and nature. So that's all going on in the background. And then while that's all happening, of course, it's July in the garden, and it is a month of incessant rain here in Norfolk, but in between the rain, sun. And so the allotment has gone wild, wild. It's just like everything, weeds, plants.
You always want to give it up.
So July is a genuine.
August? I forget which month it is.
July and August, to be fair, are the months where I think you get a bit like burnt out so you spent tons of time in spring getting everything ready, and then you go through this lovely phase where all the beautiful like late spring perennials and the flowers, and it's all looking wonderful, and then it's just overwhelmed with so much to do. And I went down.
It was spring forever sometimes. Yeah,
spring forever. Perfect time of year, right?
Summer. Late spring, early summer I'll do, but midsummer I could take it or leave it. Yeah,
I kind of agree with you. And I kind of stood there and I was just like, I hadn't really been down there that much for the last week at all. And I stood there and looked around and was just like, oh my gosh.
I hate that bit when you trip over stuff as well all the time. Do you know what I mean? Because angled underfoot stuff. And then when it's wet, like when it rains in the summer, like even today, I'm like wearing white trousers, but then you have to walk through undergrowth and this and that. It's like, I hate that. I hate dew.
Can you believe you hate dew?
Well, not very naturalistic at all, but I hate dew when I'm wearing nice clothes.
Can you believe that we love spring and we can't wait for summer, and then summer gets here and we're like complaining about summer, and then it's going to be autumn. We're going to say, we wish it was spring soon, and like this is just what we do.
Yeah, definitely.
This is what we do. But but then basically I just stood back and I was like, hang on a moment, practice what you preach, and I was like The allotment looks amazing. So there's a few weeds, whoopie-doo. There's a ton of stuff to harvest. There's bees and butterflies absolutely everywhere. I have this gorgeous little friendly baby robin that follows me all around the garden. It's the cutest thing. And I just sat there and I was just like, oh, get over yourself. Like, just let it be, you know?
Well, yeah, because it doesn't matter. Like, we actually, Arit was on stage yesterday and we were talking about, she does the Garden for the Ages talk, but somehow, somewhere we segued into kind of naturalistic gardens. And it was a lovely chat because we talked about, the way like when my mum comes around and says my garden's overgrown, this and that. And it's like, it's about stopping what other people think of your garden. And the fact that a garden feels out of control, is that more about what we think people will think or the fact that we feel it's out of control? Because actually, at that moment, the garden is doing its thing very happily. Yeah. And the robins, the butterflies, the bees are all really happy with that. Why are we not?
Exactly that. Pardon? Hold on a minute. I was then taking a picture. But Michael wanted to pose for the picture. Look at your face, you cutie.
Right.
So, yes, that's exactly that. I kind of just stepped back. Oh, your Wi-Fi is gone for me.
Oh, my God. Oh, sorry. It's because I had a stinky ice cream van.
Oh, okay.
Proves that I have to sit still, though, so carry on, darling.
It does prove you have to sit still, yeah. Anyway, that was it, really. Just exactly what you and Arit were saying. I just kind of like looked back and I was like, look how happy everything is. Everything's so green and vibrant. Everything's growing. I have beetroots. I have beetroots bigger, literally as big as my head. Like they're just absolutely ridiculously enormous.
My head is not that big, but it is big for a beetroot.
It's round. Perfectly round.
Gotta get your vehicle inside. That's why the ice cream van's revving up, I'm sure. Although that needs to stay here, actually.
I can't hear it.
No, it's more stinky, darling. Anyway, come on.
Hold your coat over your mouth. Stop you talking.
So yeah, what else were you going to tell me?
Well, I can't remember now because we're talking about ice cream, and then I suddenly.
Where are we? You've been accredited. You moaned about your garden. I'm here at TAT, and it's raining. I've got the wrong outfit on. I have brought another outfit, but that's just as hideous.
Has this been an accidental moan fest?
No, yeah, exactly. But I've seen lots of wonderful plants, and I might actually. I don't know. I'm really into coreopsis at the moment. The big frothy ones.
I like coreopsis.
There's a girl called Camellia. She's done an amazing garden here that's full of froth. It's got kind of like Calamagrostis, kind of what's that grass that's called fiber optics, cotinus, chitinus, and it's just really amazing with like Leotris coming through, and it's like a real froth garden. And I specifically went to it this morning because I knew that it had dew on it, and it just looks, oh my God, it looks amazing.
Honestly, you didn't like dew. You just said you hated dew.
I like to look at. I don't want to walk through it. I like dew for safe distance.
Hello. Is that Camellia Taylor at all?
I think so, yes. Is that right?
So,
she's a designer.
Camelia's been on our podcast. It was one of my solo episodes, and we'd done an episode about the Aspens garden that she done for Chelsea this year.
Oh, maybe that was then. I'll have to check that. I'm so sorry I haven't got the accurate information for you, Ellen Mary. I'm going to tell you, actually. You never guessed who was in my hotel last night.
Oh, well, I don't know. Who was in your hotel last night?
Hilda Swinton.
Ah, wonderful. That's amazing.
And I looked at her and I was like, oh, I know this face. And it's like, that moment. And yeah, and it's so funny because celebs, they always got something that points them out as celebs a little bit, because even though she was like kind of dressed down in kind of hoodie and something, it was a really distinctive green colour. So it's kind of like celebs don't want to be noticed, but they also do want to be noticed at the same time, I don't know. But she came in the room, she walked through a few times because I was just working in the kind of foyer area of the reception, and she came and she took 10 saucers with her. So I don't know what she was doing with
saucers.
Yeah, like cup and saucer. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I'm going to sell the story to Heat magazine anyway, which will be out before the podcast is. So yeah, but 10 saucers. and very unique lime green hoodie as well. And a very kind of nonchalant yet important walk with an assistant 2 meters behind. Yeah.
Okay, so if you read this in Heat magazine pre this, we all know that Michael has sold his story.
Exactly. But there was also she was attending that, or she was best man or something. I don't know, but I'm not sure what she's filming. She might be. I don't know.
Your Wi-Fi kind of keeps tripping in and out a little bit.
The asteroid city I saw her in recently, so yeah. But anyway, that's by the by. But that was my celebrity spot.
We like a celebrity.
And also, Rita and Mavis were here from Coronation Street, and I'm so jealous because they were on the Cloud Gardeners display. I would love to meet them. Oh my God, that would be beautiful. And they seemed like really sweet and genuine from what I saw with pictures and footage and stuff. So nice. And
they genuinely love gardening as well. Like they're big gardeners.
Do they?
They're not just there to, schmoozy around and get in the newspapers. They're genuine gardeners.
It's funny because it's like we're always surprised when a celebrity does a thing like a real person. Oh, God, they love gardening. We're always really amazed. And I'm kind of like, sometimes I step back from that. I'm like, what?
I think
people too.
I think it's because at Chelsea, a lot of people or celebs maybe go, and they're not necessarily big gardeners. They're there for a day out, which is cool, but also perhaps to get into the newspapers. So when you see celebs at shows that genuinely are interested in gardening, it's just a joy. It's not necessarily a surprise, more like, oh, that's really nice,
You're absolutely correct.
What would you do if you saw someone from EastEnders there, though?
Sorry?
What would you do if you saw someone from EastEnders there?
Well, I'm not that impressed by anyone apart from the Minogues, if you remember. Although, have I told you about my interview with the... Oh, no, I'm going to let you hear that for yourself. The interview that I did at Embassy Gardens when I got to go in the Sky Pool.
Yeah.
And this guy, it was really cool, this guy, Andrew Woodhouse, and he's worked with some real different celebs. Oh, my God, it's really raining now. Everyone's going to come in my marquee. Go away. Don't shout it here, we're recording. Everyone's coming in, even the ice cream guys. What was I talking about? And he'd worked for some real celebs, and I'm there, and I'm kind of like, I'm only impressed by Minogues. And then he then name drops a couple of people, Rihanna, Janet Jackson. I'm like, what the hell? So yeah, it's going to be out about mid-August. That's one of my solo episodes, so I think you'll enjoy that one.
Yeah, it sounds really good, and you even got to have swim in the pool as well. That's brave.
But to be honest, my parking was running out at Waitrose, so I could only be in there for 10 minutes, which was only long enough to get some social media, really. So I was so shallow, as was the pool.
I just don't think I could get in it. And I love the water. I love swimming, but that is just... Pardon?
I was scared at first, but you kind of get used to it very quickly. But it is a weird moment, yeah. And when you put even without goggles, you could put your head down under the water and you'll see to the bottom, which is really, it was really cool. I was really thankful to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing experience. And I'm sure if I was there, I probably would have tried. But when you get adrenaline, if I'm up high, I can remember standing at the top of the Rockefeller Center, and it's when I had it the worst. I get adrenaline, and it literally goes through my legs. So all I can describe it as is like fizzy lemonade in my legs. That's the only way I can describe it, and it is horrible.
Well, if I know I could fall, because obviously my center of gravity is a little bit higher than yours or lower. I don't know. If I know I could tumble, then I would be scared. But if I know it's completely, there's no way on earth that would, then I'm really a bit like, I'm okay. But
I did. Not good.
Well, it's done there. Yeah, you are kind of, you're safe. And then I think the probability of this brain is kind of probably low-ish. So, yeah.
Yeah, low-ish.
Was here Angie was here, and Gemma, who were on your retreat. Do you remember?
Hey, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool. You're nearly closing bookings, right?
Oh yeah, so I am.
Give it a push.
That is a good point. So I'm just about to close bookings. Well, what I'm going to do, because we've had so much interest, I'm saying to get everything booked really by the beginning of the week. So by the time this goes out by Monday, to be sure you can secure your place.
Yeah.
If we can fit more people in after that, then obviously there'll be some spaces available. But if you want to be sure you can come to the wellness days in September, you need to get it booked ASAP. And the wellness days are 19th, 20th of September. The 19th is all well-being for women. So women empowerment, we're going to do some like feminine energy circles, forest bathing, flower crown making, that kind of thing. And then the next day is open for everybody up in Norfolk. So anyone can come to that day. And they're just a really beautiful way to reset yourself, have a day off, have some nature connection and be with great people, have some plant-based food. It's just a really nice day. So if you want to book, peopleplantswellbeing.com, go to Wellbeing Days and book up ASAP.
I've booked, I thoroughly recommend it, and I came home a new woman. And that was exactly what I was looking for. So
and the next retreat, so cool. the one you came to in April, that's next April, and we're already taking bookings for that. I've already got people booked on that for next April, so yeah.
You're going to have more than that as well?
Pardon?
Will you have more after April as well?
I will have more after April, but the first one's next April, because I'm away in winter, so it's difficult to do anything between kind of October and April. But yes, so the wellbeing is being booked up already, so if you want to come to April, then get that booked up too. Thank you for reminding me.
Cool.
Very good.
This rain is making me need the loo. And I think you need to go because you're going somewhere cool today, I believe.
I'm going down to London to go to a greatest jazz night.
Hang on.
Night of all time.
You've got to move your vehicle off site, Helen.
All right. Well, you better move your vehicle off site then, and I'll speak to you later. I can't hear you now. Your Wi-Fi's gone from my end. Hopefully you're being recorded. I'm not sure. But it's been a pleasure speaking to you. So if anyone can hear Michael or if we're talking over each other, I have no idea. But as always, a pleasure. Have a great day at Tatton. Goodbye. Series 12 of the Plant-Based Podcast is sponsored by People Plants Wellbeing, the nature-based wellness studio where you can find your magic through the power of plants and nature. Take 10% off all services, treatments and retreats with our exclusive discount code for you, our podcast listeners. Use code PBP Series 12 via the website or when you contact the team to book. Next wellness days are coming up soon. Find out more and book your place at peopleplantswellbeing.com or on Instagram at peopleplantswellbeing.
The music for the Plant-Based Podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.